All right, what's going on, guys? Welcome to the Strength Method. I'm Rambir. Today, I'm bringing on one of my good friends, another a fellow strength coach. He's up in Toronto, Jason Diaz, and I'm gonna let him kind of take it away. But the topic of today's conversation is gonna be about the proper way or the most efficient and effective way to go from an injury back
Oh, I
to
can't hear you. Can't
bitch.
hear you.
How about now?
There we go.
Okay. So it's cool. It
It's
recorded.
pretty
So
quiet.
the topic of today is going to be going back, going from an injury where normally people would be like, this is going to take you 6 months, 12 months, whatever, and then maybe you can go back to it. Versus how I've always been talking about this kind of stuff, where if you do the right stuff and you have the right understanding of the body, not only can you return and heal faster, but you can surpass your previous abilities. So I'm gonna let Jason take it away. Shout out to everybody in the Brown Alliance because they got to kind of experience the whole process as you were going through it. So Jason, take it away.
Yeah, man. So I injured my right fibula playing soccer. This was June 11th, so just under 8 weeks ago. It was a fracture, and basically what happened was my foot kind of got caught in the turf and then flipped over vertically, which was I never really pictured rolling your ankle in that direction. It's always been left to right, and I'm someone who's had like a history of a ton of like everyone who's played a sport like soccer or basketball where there's a lot of cutting. Ankle rolls are almost inevitable, but it's very rarely like a vertical, like a straightforward one. And as a result, fibula got fractured, and there was pretty significant swelling and damage to all of the tendons and ligaments kind of in the area. Um, it took me, I don't know, 6 weeks, I would say 5.5 to 6 weeks to like be back on my feet and back to like not having a cast on, normal, more or less day to day life being back to normal. That was about at the 5 to 6 week range. And now I'm working on getting back to sport. I'm about like 7.5, 8 weeks in at this point, working on getting back to sport.
So that was like a so that was the what would you rate like the pain level from the injury itself like?
So it was really interesting. So when the immediate moment of the injury happening and like the few minutes afterwards, it was like 10 out of 10. Like my eyes are like watering. Like it was serious. Um, but after a couple minutes, I like kind of calmed down and I looked at it and I kind of felt around with it and like just did some like breathing exercises just on the spot. Like I was helped off the field and I was like, okay, like how bad is this? Like what's going on? I just like my mind was racing at this point, like kind of going a little crazy. I was like, all right, do some breath work, just chill out. Managed to calm myself down, and then I was like, okay, let's see what's actually going on with this because it's I guess it's easy to be like, oh God, everything's fucked. I got to go to the hospital right away. Like panic stations, all that stuff. But I think it's like having um, the ability to just be calm in that moment, and I'm grateful for that. It allowed me to kind of just test it out. Like first thing I did was like, let's see if I can move my toes up and down because if I can't do that, like things are really bad. And I was able to do that, and then I was like, okay, cool. Can I put weight on it? I was like, okay, really lightly, just like with my foot, with my butt was on a bench, and I was just putting my foot down and just trying to press through my toes. I was like, oh, okay, I can do that. Like it's not that bad. Um, in the immediate time following this, it was like I would say a solid like it was like a pulsing 3 to 4 out of 10, but manageable. I do feel like I have a pretty high pain threshold, so for me it's like okay, I'm fine, like whatever, it's a 3 or 4 out of 10. Like in the like right away after that I was like, oh cool, nothing's too badly wrong, I'll be back to playing in like 4 weeks, 6 weeks, all good. um, and I guess that was the immediate pain response. In the weeks following, it was actually quite minimal, which was quite shocking to me. I kept expecting the pain to go up. Like I was like, oh, like swelling will go down. I'll be able to move it more, and I would assume that there would be more pain as a result. But like, there wasn't really that much. I would say like there was moments during the day when, because I work on my feet, I'm a personal trainer, and I had no reduction in hours as a result of this. I took a couple of days off when it got like really bad. But like it was like very isolated, and like my regular days, I was still flowing as busy as I've ever been. I had, I think, 130 hours in the month of July,
Damn.
just to give you an idea. Um, and yeah, so some days it would be like, okay, I get home, I'm like, holy crap, like this is throbbing and like not feeling great at all. I need to like kind of just relax, calm it down. Epsom salts, actually, this is big tip. Epsom salts are like such a lifesaver when it's like something's really painful. It just changes the sensation a little bit, gets a little bit of blood flow moving without you having to really do anything. It's just a calming
Yeah.
presence. But yeah, the overall pain wasn't horrible. And again, I just attribute that to having a really pretty high threshold for pain tolerance. Um,
Well, you know, I
but
wanted to
yeah, the
I wanted
yeah,
to point out on this piece, and that's why I asked it, because your psychological perspective plays quite a bit in terms of like how you perceive and actually feel the pain as well. And I was just pulling up the Brown Alliance thread, and I was going back to that day, and or the following day, and like I was looking at your notes, like you immediately that same day you shared like what the plan was, what you were going to do, and what you thought would happen. When people get injured and they freak out, like that only amplifies the pain, the stressful environment of somebody's psychological state has a huge impact on not just how well they will recover, if they will recover, but also the level of pain that they feel. Because I mean, this is why I love talking about this kind of stuff, is because people have a very skewed and incorrect perception of pain. So that was something I wanted to point out, because like at 11:59 on July 11th or June 11th, you wrote key points after your videos. You were like, keep moving, keep working the non-injured leg. Upper body work is going to be heavily focused on, and then flossing the area, moving the foot around pain free. You can't have that wherewithal, and or you can't like be freaking out and then also have that kind of response. So I think that's a huge piece right off the bat for anybody with whatever kind of pain. Relax and calm down. You will be able to heal pretty much. Like, I can't think of something where you can't, like, fix or heal something to the previous levels, if not more, if you just relax and know that, okay, this is what's possible.
yeah, and don't get me wrong. There was definitely times when I was like spiraling. I'm like, this hurts a lot. Like it's not feeling good. And like, there was actually I got sick midway through. Like I would say like 2.5, 3 weeks in, which was like actually the worst time for the injury because the swelling was just going down, and I was like starting to almost feel better, but then I got sick. Like, and it was like getting hit by a truck. I was like, my sinuses were clogged. It was like, I was just like, holy crap! Like, how long is this going to go on for? Because I was like not really able to move, not really able to drive still, and like all of a sudden sick as well. It was like, oh my days. But I will like just shout out like yourself and my other mentor, Ben Clarfield. He goes by the ATG coach on Instagram. You guys can follow him, whatever. One of the best strength coaches around in town. But yeah, just having mentors and having people, friends, and other people in the community that you can kind of reach out to, and having a group that you can you know just bounce ideas off, bounce thoughts off that are going to keep you level. It was big. I think my one of my first calls, like after I told my girlfriend, I told my parents, like, this is what happened at soccer, whatever. Ben was one of my first calls because I was like, dude, like, what the hell? Like, is like what are we gonna do? Like, I wasn't calm myself in that moment, but having an external source of calm, like, just he was just like, dude, don't worry about it, we'll fix it. Um, yeah, we'll just do the things we do, and it'll improve over time. And I was like, yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense. I'm like,
You,
I've
you
seen it work for so many people. It'll work for me.
Yeah, and that's another key thing, and you know, and also in the video, I have your notes pulled up, but that part is so big because yeah, when you're in your own head, even though we know, and by the way, I want to just say, and kind of didn't even mention this, like Jason is working at one of the premier strength and conditioning facilities in the world. Like I'm because you know the knowledge that is in that building and the experience is you know it has a very long pedigree, you know, especially based on like how far back the experience and knowledge goes and where it's coming from. Um, but even though we know these things, it happens to us. It's still not like, oh, I know what to do, but like it's not that I want it. Like I still don't want this to happen. And in those moments, if you're in your own dialogue by yourself, it can be unhelpful. So I think that's super important. Like your number 3 point, which is don't go at it alone. Like find somebody who you can trust, and like you said, don't listen, ignore most people's advice. Like if the person has not done it themselves, everything they say is going to be unhelpful and unuseful. So find those people, and luckily in the world of social media, we can find those people, you know. And so that part is huge, and I think that's a foundation. Like if you're looking for stuff how to fix something but you miss this foundational piece, it's gonna be tougher. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it to your point, having somebody tell you like, dude, it's gonna be fine, is so huge. And then you calm down and you're like, all right, let me go do my 1,000 reps of whatever, you know.
Yep, yep. No, that it was a huge game changer. Just telling someone, having someone to tell the voices in your own head to just shut up for a second and like relax, because there is, it's just easy to get caught up in your own narratives, make your own narratives that aren't necessarily true, um, and aren't necessarily helpful. It's possible that some there's lies that are helpful for you too. So it's possible that like it wasn't all going to be okay. Like it's possible that it could have taken 3 months instead of a month and a half, 2 months, and that wouldn't have been great. But just having someone to be like relax in that moment it's just like it's invaluable. So yeah, can't say enough about that. Just the value of a coach and mentorship and community. It's big time. Yeah,
Yeah.
just staying level, man. Just staying level.
By the way, when you went to the doctor, right?
Yeah,
What
I
what
did.
did they say to you? What was their response?
That's so. I mean, in Canada, the healthcare system is it's a doozy, man. I got actually zero advice from my doctor. It's mind blowing to me, but there was quite literally nothing, not even nothing helpful, but there wasn't even anything unhelpful said to me. It's crazy. I went there. I was like, hey man, I'm pretty sure either a ligament or tendon or bone is broken in my ankle. Um, and he basically said, okay, I'm gonna get like I called him first and had this conversation over the phone so I could get a requisition without going to him in person. I got the scan done, and actually, thank God, the technician there um, was he was a G. He showed up for me. He was like, "Yeah, dude, your shit is fractured. You can go look at the screen and just confirm it for yourself." And I went there, took a picture for myself, and if I hadn't done that, my follow up appointment with my doctor, I had to basically do it myself. I had to show up at the thing and be like, "Hey, I need to walk in because I haven't got the results of my scan." Um, and the doctor was like, "Oh, there's nothing wrong. Your scan, like the report showed up normal." And I was like, "That's not possible." I'm like, I pull up my phone. I'm like, "Here, look, dude, like it's broken." And he's like, "Oh, it's broken. Wow." And he's like, "Cool. I'll send a follow up to the X-ray clinic so they can monitor your progress." And to this day, I haven't got a single follow up from that X-ray clinic. I received no advice from my doctor. I kind of tried to talk to him about what I was feeling, what I was able to do, what I wasn't able to do, and it was more or less no advice at all. It was
Yeah.
just I feel so lucky to have the community I have and be in the position that I am, where I have first of all knowledge in my own head, but um, other people around me, like I said, coaches, mentors. I saw a chiropractor pretty regularly through the process. All these people around me just giving the advice of like how to actually progress it, and basically allowing me to get out my thoughts and receive feedback that's actually useful. It's not that all doctors are bad. It's just that you can have these horrible experiences where you need to have backups in place to show out for yourself, and have yourself covered in the case that the doctor isn't helpful, which was my case, and I'm sure there's tons of other people out
Yeah.
there in a similar situation. So
Well,
yeah,
and
big time.
that part is important as well, where it's like if you have something going on, whatever it is, it might be a physical injury, like what Jason went through, or it might be an illness or whatever. You have to take the responsibility upon yourself to find the answers. Because if you're like, well, this is a doctor and they should know and they should be able to tell me and they should, well, then, it's like, good luck with that. Because, it's not that they're bad. And we won't go too far into this conversation because that's a whole, podcast in and of itself. But, they're not incentivized and they don't know. Like, they don't know what to do. They don't have any knowledge on actually building the body to be more resilient. They don't have that knowledge. They have just enough knowledge to say what is a symptom and here is a prescription based on that symptom. That's about as far as they
Yep,
go. Not everybody, but generally. Um, and so the key point in that is like you got to take the responsibility on yourself to find people who have done the thing that you want to be done. So very, very important there. But I think it's always interesting to compare like people's results because nobody ever there's so many more stories of people healing these types of things and other things versus that just they're not talked about, they're not shared. All we ever hear about is doctors did this bad thing, doctors, well, let's, okay, cool, but let's find the examples of success stories. And that's, which is one of the beautiful things about ATG. We look at what are the successful pieces, what are the successful clues, and let's integrate those ideas and philosophies into, ATG. So let's get into some of the let's get into some of the technical stuff. You
sure.
you have you were talking about isometrics, expanding
Yep,
range, and then the nutritional component. So
for sure. Yeah, let's talk about the movement side of things first. I would say this was um, this was the bigger challenge for me personally. I found nutrition to be more or less, um, like I kept it more or less level. There was some stuff that I added, especially supplementary stuff, um, that really boosted things. But for the most part, I kept my nutrition relatively the same. I'll talk about the movement side of things though first. Yeah, isometrics were big. I guess the first and foremost is to just keep moving. Like, don't. The cast was like my last resort. The doctor actually, this brings this to mind. In that second visit, when I showed him that it was fractured, he's like, "Yeah, we're gonna have to cast this." I was in my head immediately. I was like, "I'm not doing that. Like, no chance. There's no reason to." I was surviving for 3 weeks before that without a cast. It was like, there's no reason to. So keeping moving and keeping even okay, like say you have a wrist injury, right? Your wrist is here. If you can move your fingers, that's better than nothing. If you can move your elbow, that's better than nothing. If you can move your shoulder, that's better than nothing. Even if you can't do this and that really hurts, that's like too painful for you at the time, like that's fine. There's all these things above and below the wrist. Same thing with the ankle. The toes are right there, right above. You can move that around. Your knees right there, you can move that around. So that was the immediate stuff that I was doing right away. And mainly for me, the idea was like, I want to keep my mind muscle connection with the foot and the area around the ankle, so that when it's time to actually put force into the ankle, it's not like, oh my god, I haven't moved this in three
yeah.
weeks. So that was really big right off the bat. I was able, actually, just within the second day, like I had like just like a quarter of an inch of range, moving like dorsiflexion. So I started doing that pretty much right away. Like I would get home from work, do my Epsom salt bath, Like I would basically just soak my foot in a big bucket, and then when that was done, it would be very like calmed and relaxed. And at that point, I was just like, okay, cool. Like let's just move the foot, just like that. And like it didn't hurt. It hurt maybe a little. Like it would push it to like maybe a 2 or a 3 out of 10, but that was okay. Like you can push into that little bit. It's more important to, in my opinion, it's more important to keep it moving than to be 100% pain free. Um, Pain free is great. That's always the end goal. That's how I feel now. I can move it in all directions. There's no issues. But right at the start, like it was almost there was nothing I could do that caused zero pain. There was always a little bit, and that's okay.
That's
Yeah, go ahead.
interesting. That's interesting. I just want to pause on that point for a second because I always go like, I always think about, okay, if I have an injury or something's wrong, you don't go into the pain. But I also, and as you're saying that, I'm like, okay, I agree with that too because the pain is not like a on off switch of like if you go into pain now you're screwed. The pain is like, hey,
Exactly.
if you go further into this and you dial up the pain by doing whatever, then you might have more difficulty, you know, doing what you're trying to do and healing. It's just a warning signal that gets louder the more you push into it. So I really like, I have not ever heard that perspective before of like, it's okay if there's pain because the movement side is so important. You have to move. If you want something to heal, you have to move to get blood flow. You have to move to make sure that the electrical current, the nervous system has a connection there. So I really like that. Like I've never heard anybody say that in that particular way.
Yeah, and it wasn't like I was like, oh my God, I was like a 7 or 8 out of 10 where it was like my eyes are popping out or anything like that. It was like it was pretty manageable. It's like for me, I always think about it like this: if it's a consistent between a 2 and a 4, out of 10, as long as it's not like 2 and then all of a sudden a 6, like I think like there were a couple moments when that happened and I was like, okay, this is way too far. Like let's just dial it back and just take it easy for the day. That did happen. Or like I would bump my foot into things like in the early days, like just bumping my foot on accident into like anything was like, holy crap,
Yeah.
that was like too much. And so that kind of gave me like it was good to have the perspective though, because it was like, okay, if this is a like 8 to 10 out of 10, and I can work at like a 1 or 2 out of 10, it's like, okay, I'd rather just keep it there and it's manageable and I can still work it and it's fine. So this was like really early on. I would say about a week and a half to 2 weeks in, I started incorporating like isometrics, um, where I
And
would literally
explain
just
that
raise my
for
heel off the ground.
explain what
Sure.
isometric is for somebody who doesn't know what it means.
Yeah. So an isometric is pretty much, I guess, an easy way to put it is stopping in the stretch position, or the contracted position. So, um, in my case, I was spending a lot of time in the contracted position because stretching was really not viable for me in any meaningful way, especially right at the start. Like I said, any stretch more than like an inch in any direction or a quarter inch in any direction at the start would cause like unbearable pain. So it was like, okay, I'm just raising my heel. My feet would be flat on the floor. My butt would be in a chair, and I would raise my heel like literally like maybe half an inch to an inch, and I would hold it there for like 30 seconds. What that did is it allowed my calf muscles to contract. It pulled on the Achilles a little bit without moving the ankle too much, and that allowed me to keep. What the main benefit of this was, like you said, the mind muscle connection, keeping the neurons firing and connected to the foot. But second, it allowed me to keep my calf muscle intact, because yeah, like we said, movement is key, and continuing to keep it moving is really important. If I had let the calf degrade, what it would have meant is I have to rebuild the calf muscle first, and then do the connection stuff, and then also get into the ligaments and tendons. So this allowed me to skip the step of rebuilding the muscle, because I didn't really lose much. So that was the biggest benefit of the isometrics. And then following that was building up range. So there was two things that helped me a lot. The floss band is one of them, and the second is actually using manual therapy and having someone actually move it themselves that kind of knows what they're doing. I was really scared myself to like play around with it, especially like early on. It wasn't like that's not something I know how to do. Like straight up, I wouldn't claim to know how to do that. Um, so I had someone at the gym kind of just play around with it, move it through range, and just I was like, oh, cool, I can actually move it there. Because I didn't want to, like I said before, in the first week or the first 2 weeks, it was like you move it too far, it's like pain, death.
Yeah.
But then having someone like move it for me, I was like, oh, okay, great, I can actually access this. This is awesome. And then I was able to train in that range. And then my isometrics got a little bit longer and a little bit further. All these things were super helpful. But then the second thing is flossing. Flossing was really big because after someone was able to move it for me, now I was able to wrap a band around and pull on it and move it myself. So that was like huge. It was like now I can do the massage or manual therapy type stuff without needing someone. And again, this was like after I had seen what it was able to do by having someone else do it for me. That was pretty big as well. Yeah, as soon as the swelling went down, it just kept getting more and more and more, and over time I was able to start training it through full contractions, like weighted, more or less, like having my feet standing up, having my feet on the ground, and raising my heels. So that was the start, and from there it just kept expanding, just kept making the stretch a little bit more, and then yeah.
Yeah. That is something that something that popped into my mind. Is even if you don't have an injury, this is one of the reasons. The fact that you have so much strength already, you've built muscle, you've built the cardiovascular system so that blood can be transported more efficiently. And versus someone who doesn't have strength or very much muscle, this is a very important. I know most people are not going to do it, but this is another reason why you should be strength training properly through full range of motion as we do in ATG, because a stronger person is going to be able to heal much faster than a person who's not. So, you can do a lot for yourself. Like, we can't all, it's not about, oh, we'll never get injured. It can happen, right? But the point is, can I strengthen my position on the board so that if it does happen, it's not, like you're not like, well, the doctor didn't say anything, but it's not a, who knows? Because, people, guys will say, oh, I had this injury back in high school. I'm like, how old are you? So you're talking about an injury from 30 years ago and you're still like, you have issues with it? Like, that doesn't make any sense. So, like, if you're not training now, I would highly recommend, in your area, find an ATG coach or find a good strength and conditioning coach, because this is going to build your ability to recover in case, right? God forbid.
That's for sure. Having the pre-existing muscle mass, like if your muscle, let's just say we make it a score out of 100. If your muscle mass score is at the upper 90s mark, and you lose 10% of it, you may be at like an 85. But if your muscle mass is only at like a 50, right? You lose a bit of it. It's like, okay, now to build that back up, it's like it becomes harder and harder, and you have less to work with when you're starting out.
Yeah.
Which is huge. And I think even like all the ligament tendons, just like playing sport pretty much my whole life, having that resiliency was big. Having been through a bunch of ankle rolls before and recovered from it, that's also big. Like having previous injuries is like, it sucks, but it's kind of a blessing, because it's like, okay, this is how an injury feels. And this is how it feels to recover from it. And this is kind of the steps. You already kind of have an idea. So again, like that goes back to like, if you haven't had a major injury yourself before, maybe you should work with someone who's seen a bunch of major injuries themselves, and with people they've worked with.
Yeah.
That's big time. Just having a knowledge of the steps, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, if it wasn't for injury, I would not be sitting here because, I like the whole reason I got into strength and conditioning was that back pain, that back pain where I couldn't even walk sometimes, which I was like, what the hell is going on? So, I always like to make things as simple as possible. It's like, look, your entire life will benefit from you getting stronger. It just so happens that I believe that, and we believe that the ATG system is the best, most efficient path to building complete strength, and your bulletproof reserve, as Ben calls it. But it just allows you to do everything else. This is the reason why I called my company and my podcast the Strength Method, is because building strength, we don't care about any of the methods or whatever, but just making sure that I continuously get stronger physically will give me pretty much everything that I want. Appearance, ability, performance, health, all of these things are
Resiliency, I
enhanced.
think, is the best way to put it.
What was that?
I said, I think resiliency is probably the best way to like sum it up. You become resilient to so many different things, whether it's mental or physical.
Yep.
Like just by strength training, it's just huge. It's huge.
Yeah, and I don't think, all the other modalities and pieces of the puzzle don't matter if you don't have strength. So it's like, my one of my favorite analogies is like, look, it's like having more strength and ability physically is like having more money. To a guy who has $1 million in the bank, your car blows up and then the water heater dies. Spending $20,000 in a weekend is nothing. But to a guy who only has $50 in the bank, even buying a cup of coffee for someone is a big fucking deal. So it's like you want to build that bank account of strength the same way that you would do financially.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. Really good way to put it.
Let's get into some of this nutrition stuff.
Oh, just before we finish that, the other thing that kind of comes to mind with the training side of things is you can always train something. Even if your arm is broken and your shoulder literally can't move, you can still probably train legs in some sort of way. Same thing here. Like my whole right leg didn't work. I could train my left leg and I could train my upper body. So that's what I did as much as humanly possible. I was hitting upper like 4 or 5 days a week. Of course, there was days when mentally it wasn't 100% there. I had to like barely do anything, but blood flow is blood flow. I think you said this before. The circulatory system is a closed loop. So if you're getting blood flow into the upper body, your heart is still pumping, and that blood is still going to be moving through the body.
Yep.
Blood flow is nutrients to joints. It's nutrients to bones. It's nutrients to the ligaments and tendons. So by training the upper body, you actually get this secondary effect of having blood flow go to the damaged area, in my case, or whatever. If your neck is injured, you might train arms and it'll feel great. Whatever. Just keep moving in some sort of appreciable way.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's get into nutrition.
I'm glad you highlighted that, because most people will be like, "Oh, my toe hurts, so I can't do anything. I'm not gonna come to the gym." I'm like, bro, what are you talking about? I can't tell you how many times I've said that. Like, look, there's like I said, I can't think of any injury where you still can't work out something. And guess what? That is the worst thing you could do to completely stop moving. I actually learned that from he's currently legendary strength coach. I think he's coaching Canada's women's basketball team. He's the strength and conditioning coach, Charlie Weingroff. But I will never forget. I was in a conference up in Seattle, and he was talking about this, and I was like, holy shit! I was like, this makes so much sense. But yeah, let's get into some of this nutritional stuff. First thing you have here is berries.
Yep. Yeah. That was the first thing that came to mind on my list. I love berries. I just eat so many of them anyways. But just having the antioxidants continuing to come in, as much antioxidant stuff as possible, because you don't want that the tissue to scar up too much. You don't want there to be a big ball of dead stuff in there. So having a crap ton of antioxidants is huge. But before all of that, let's just talk about the basics, because this just bears repeating as many times as we can possibly do. Uh, Having a protein goal and trying to hit that every single day, giant, like huge. If your body doesn't have adequate protein, it literally can't heal what needs to be healed. Um, all of your bones, all of your muscles, all of your organs, tendons, ligaments, they're made up of protein. So if you're not getting your protein in, like, you're not going to heal back to 100%. It's not going to be as efficient as it could be. And you won't, like, never mind that. It's just like you won't feel like you've eaten, or like that you've done what you need to do. Um, that's point one. Second is water. Um, your body creates a lot of waste as a result of the healing process, and water is like one of the big ways that we flush out waste in our body. So making sure you get your water in is like just do it. Just drink
Yeah.
your gallon. Try and do it by 5 p.m. so you don't go to the bathroom all the time in the night. Um, and that's that. Um, the other thing, and this is kind of counterintuitive to um, weight loss and fat loss, but you do need to be in a caloric surplus when you're healing an injury. The amount of days where I was just completely drained, and honestly, like, I was eating a lot, but I was still like feeling so hungry at the end of the day, because my body was just using up so much, putting so much effort into fixing this. uh, I didn't I honestly, I didn't like really recognize the amount of toll that it takes to actually heal an injury. I was just continuing to work. I was like, whatever, I'll figure it out, kind of. And yeah, making sure you're eating a little bit over, I would say maybe like 250 to 350 calories over what you typically would, or what your maintenance is a good idea. In the case of an injury, I would say that would be like my absolute basics. If you can just do that, like, you'll probably be in pretty good shape um, coming out of it. Um, but then you can start getting into stuff with supplements, and like I said, the antioxidants with the berries was that's one natural source of it. But there's some great supplements that help with that too. Um, I took stuff like astaxanthin, quercetin, and a curcumin extract, which all kind of they're just different varieties of antioxidants to kind of help clear out the swelling, help clear out the gunk, really, that gets created as a result of a traumatic injury like this. But I would say those are kind of my basics. Did you have anything else you wanted
No,
to talk
I
about?
agree with the basics, dude. I always, and it's funny because that's exact the protocol that I follow, that I've done myself, and that I outline for people for since forever. Is the first thing, and then this is just on the nutrition side, like protein, water, and then I'll eat if there's something wrong, I'll eat a shit ton of berries. It's actually funny, like the I remember I was playing in a league, and this 250 guy like basically rammed into my knee, and my knee went like this way, and I was like, ah, fuck. So I immediately stepped off. The first thing I did was immediately I was like, okay, I can't put weight on this, but I was able to move it through, like, like a split squat, like a few inches, and I just started moving it, and then I got in my car, and the first place I went to was the grocery store, and picked up a bunch of berries, and I like inhaled all these berries, drank a ton of water, and then went to the sauna. Yeah, if you're not hitting the protein, the water, and then the berries and the fruits and vegetables, nothing else really will matter. Like, you got to do those pieces for the other pieces to have some sort of, noticeable
Yeah, that's
effect.
for sure. Like, sauna is great. Sauna is awesome. I did it like 3 or 4 times a week. Luckily, I'm at a gym where I have the access to that whenever I can, really. So I was doing a ton of sauna, but I mean, that wouldn't have done anything. These are like the extras, I would say. Like, when you talk about saunas, you talk about red light therapy, all that kind of stuff. We're talking about the extras that kind of bring you from like 95 to 100% in terms of everything you can possibly do. But like, I would say like 80 to 85% is literally just your protein, your water, and like getting your sunlight in, and just general movement.
Yeah.
And then yeah, like the berries part of it, like that's like probably 90% of what you need to do to recover just right
Yeah.
there.
It just amplifies the main things. Like if there's no main
Yeah,
things, you have these amplifiers. There's nothing to amplify. You get nothing. You
yeah,
know.
yeah,
um,
yeah, yeah.
let's see what else. Oh, you did. You actually did mention sauna in there too. Yeah.
I did, yeah. So I can get into some of the supplement stuff because that definitely made a difference, and it definitely is something that would be useful to people. I think just hearing the supplement kind of stack basics that I used. I don't think there was anything too crazy in here. Um, One was it's called AOR's Bone Basics, but really I'm sure there's a ton of other bone centric supplements. This is more specific in my case because it was a bone break. I recognize that I'm not getting random stuff like boron, copper, and manganese in my diet. No matter how much of the other good stuff you eat, some stuff is going to be missing, and those were kind of stuff that I identified. So that was one of the ones. It's called AOR, and it's called Bone Basics. AOR is the brand. Bone Basics is the name of the supplement. Um, Making sure your vitamin D and K2 levels are appropriately high. So I took a combo supplement for those two. Vitamin D has a big part to play in healthy bones in general, and more so when you're dealing with a break, you're going to use up a lot of it, shoving it into that injured area to help it heal. Um, Collagen and vitamin C is another one that helps a lot. Vitamin C is actually an antioxidant in and of itself, so that kind of goes along with why we're eating so many berries in the first place. But I would also took a supplement for vitamin C, and I supplemented collagen because, believe it or not, bone is made up mostly of collagen. Um, an animal protein has a ton of collagen, but adding an extra supplement can never hurt when it comes to that. Helps with the regeneration of the connective tissue. So that includes all the tendons and ligaments in the area as well. Magnesium is the other one that's really big. It's another one of the minerals that actually form bones. So having those levels be high and recognizing that they will get depleted as the healing process occurs. So you might feel a little bit more anxious, a little bit more drowsy, a little bit like weary, especially as the day goes on. And magnesium helps replenish that. I recommend that to everyone almost all the time, regardless of injury,
Yeah.
because it can just make such a big difference on things like mood and um, even just having someone. So oftentimes people will just come into the gym after like the first few weeks and they'll be like a little bit depleted because working out actually depletes magnesium. You do need to bring those levels back up, and adding a supplement for it is huge because it's not in our soil, so it's not in our food. Um, and then the other one was fish oil. Fish oil and the omega 3s attached to it help a crap ton with the inflammation and swelling. Um, Omega 3s are probably the most antioxidant and anti inflammatory substance that we have available to us. So, having an appropriate amount of that in the diet, obviously, if you're having wild fish or fish in general, um, you'll have quite a bit of omega 3s in your diet naturally. But most people aren't having fish every day.
No.
I know I'm not. I maybe like once every 2 weeks, once a month even. So during especially in the earlier days, I was taking maybe 3 or 4 tablespoons of omega 3s every single day to make sure that those levels were topped up as
Yeah.
needed.
Yeah. That sounds pretty. All that sounds pretty reasonable and straightforward. Um,
And none of this really costed that much. I would say as a whole, um, maybe like $250 over the course of like the
two
entire
months.
time.
Yeah.
Like especially like something like vitamin D, vitamin C, like magnesium. It's not that expensive. Like you can find really good supplements for all those things in the realm of like $25 to $30.
Yeah.
You don't need to really break the bank with that, and it can make a big difference in just making sure that your diet is like looked at from a full 360-degree view.
Yeah. Um, what about one interesting thing? And by the way, just have to reiterate again. because our tendency is to look for shortcuts and think that
Yeah.
shortcuts can help. But before we talk about it, we'll talk about the peptides. But
Yeah.
I just have to like double down on this even more of like, even if let's take it a step further. If all your nutritional stuff is on point, but you don't do the movement and the strength training, you're still not gonna get the results, because it's the movement that actually is the signal. Um, it's like, if you have a work site, and you have a bunch of guys there, and you have to send them material. Well, if the guys aren't there and there's no blueprints, but you send materials there, nothing is going to get built, right? It's same as if you send the guys there and then you don't send materials, it's not going to matter because they don't have anything to rebuild with. So that part is very important. And before we get into the peptides, the most important thing is the movement and the training. The second thing is the basics of nutrition. And then now we'll get into the peptides and things like that.
This is the more interesting esoteric kind of. Yep. Sorry, I think we cut out wavelengths, all this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, this is the more kind of fringe esoteric kind of fun stuff that I basically, I was like, okay, this injury is happening, whether I like it or not. It's going to take some time to recover. And I was exposed to this idea of peptides from I guess he's a biohacker podcaster, whatever. It's called Ben Greenfield.
Yeah.
He has a fantastic article about it. If you just Google Ben Greenfield BPC, there's a really good article that comes up. So I'm going to defer to that as much as possible for the nitty gritty and what is actually going on with this. But I'll give like a basic background. Peptides are essentially a string of amino acids. So amino acids is the proteins that make up, amino acids make up the proteins which come together to create all of the connective tissue in our body. And peptides are kind of a analog for that, and a way to give our body instructions on where to put the amino acids when it comes to our body. Because obviously, like when you're injured, your body has an idea that, okay, we need to do this to this area. We need to put protein in this area. We need to put these things in this area. What peptides do is it gives it a really clear map and an idea of this is where these exactly need to go. And it basically gives the scaffolding for healing an injury at, what's the word for it? Extra, whatever. From somewhere else. You're basically taking something that's going to do this, give you this map, and give your body this map without, as an addition. So your body has an idea, but this gives it the idea. I took peptides about a week and a half in, and I credit them a ton with just speeding up this whole process. I took it as an injectable. There's a bit of a process in terms of putting everything together and getting it prepared. But I took these peptides as an injectable for, I would say, 20 days between week 2 and week 4 of injury recovery. And yeah, they really helped, man. Some of the effects are just speeding up the healing process, especially for connective tissues. But one thing we've seen them help a lot with is people with really bad gut issues get helped. And that's because they are, especially the BPC 157 is a compound that helps specifically with connective tissue. And guess what? Your gut is made up of a ton of collagen and a lot of similar stuff to the tendons and ligaments in your body. So BPC helps with that, but then, yeah, it helps speed up injuries. It gives your body the scaffolding to put the proteins in the right place, put the amino acids in the right sequencing to facilitate healing faster.
Yeah, I have to echo this point because, in my entire life, one of the things that I've always kind of pointed to as an example is like, I've never taken anything. I've never taken, and even just like regular supplements, because just to prove and show the evidence of like, none of these things will do anything. You have to do the basics, which is eat your protein, lift the weights, and do it for a long time. But
Yeah.
we were talking about this, and I mean, just to give an even more simple like explanation, what are peptides? Well, like you said, they're just amino acids that have been put together in certain ways. So like they're not they're not drugs, they're not like made up by humans, they're naturally occurring. And so
Yeah.
one of the reasons that you don't hear about these things even though they've been around for a while is cuz pharmaceutical companies can't make a profit off of them. And so they can only patent things that they've changed or they've made themselves. So that's one of the reasons like you won't really hear about them. And but they're naturally occurring. So that's why when you were talking about this, I got curious about them, and I also took BPC 157 oral form. I was having this like tendonitis elbow thing. Basically, long story short, I did something stupid where I loaded up a JM press, which is super stressful on the triceps, which you probably should not do for less than 6 reps. I was like, oh, let me see my 1 rep max on the JM press. Probably one of the dumbest things you could do. But like 8 weeks had gone by, nothing, and no change. I was like, what is going on? And I'm doing all my work, my band work, getting blood flow.
Yep.
2 weeks into taking the BPC 157 orally, like I'm pressing everything again. Like it's
Yep.
amazing. So I don't want to get people too hyped up, but
Yep.
if you got the basics down, this could be a massive game changer or piece of the puzzle for somebody, because it does I've clearly it speeds up healing, and I have read and heard a lot of those stories about people's gut issues being healed. And the doctors will never talk about it. I have a lot of patient or clients who
Yep.
have a lot of people have gut problems. They don't talk about them because for obvious reasons. But doctors will never prescribe BPC 157 because they can't. It's not part of their system.
Yep.
But so many I can it's I've heard so many stories about people healing their IBS, their IBD, ulcerative
Yep.
colitis with BPC 157. So that's just a really interesting and cool point.
It's an extra. It's an extra. That's the best way I can put it. It's like I think maybe it might have sped up my recovery by like a week, 2 weeks, something like that. Nature still has to run its course. It's not a magic pill that you're just going to take and things are just going to fix. Like you said, if you have those basics down, it's like, okay, we can start talking about this stuff. I mean, there's other stuff as well. Like on top of this, like I had a chiropractor who uses a bunch of like different like technological tools to kind of help things move along. And to be frank, I didn't know how much I believed in it when I started. I don't even know how much I believe in it now. But when I think about especially a major kind of traumatic injury like this, I think it's important to kind of stack as many placebos in your favor as possible. So
100%.
even if you're like, okay, I'm kind of skeptical about this, whatever, it's like you're still there, you're still getting treatment in some sort of way. So stuff like I did like shockwave therapy. It was so painful. This was like 4 weeks in. It was like it felt like it was like an ultrasound, but then it would go in certain places and it would feel like more pain actually than when I first broke the thing. I was like, this is insane.
Yeah.
This is crazy. Um, so I did like ultrasound. I was doing microcurrent stimulation. So I don't know if you've seen like what Dr. Hose is, the little pad things.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was like that, but more precise. Instead of a millicurrent, it's a microcurrent, so you barely feel it, and it's a lot more targeted. So I had that on for like 8 hours a day. I had like a magnet therapy thing. Like there was all these kind of weird like kind of fringe treatments. But I'll say like when you're dealing with something like this, there's no harm in just stacking as much of that in your favor as possible.
Yeah.
Because unless it's like something that's you feel it's gonna hurt you,
Yeah.
it's probably just going to help, even if it's just like 0.01% or 0.1%, whatever. it can make a difference. And I
Yeah,
think it did
well,
for me for sure.
and then that kind of brings me around to like something, that I think is extremely important. One, I do the same thing. Like when something's wrong, I go, okay, I throw everything at it,
Yeah.
and I figure it out. And but what that tells me is somebody who does that with a calm perspective, obviously, because if you're doing
Yeah.
it in this like desperate, like
Right.
negative place, um, that's affecting your physiology. So that's something, that's kind of the last thing that I wanted to share was like, you know um, how you are thinking about all this stuff and your level of calm or not calm is actually affecting your physiology. And it's so important to stay in that calm, peaceful mind uh, environment in your mind and your body, because
Yep.
it's literally changing your physiology. It's like this is not like, oh, we're just gonna pretend and everything's gonna be. No, there's science, there's data. I love Dr. Joe Dispenza. I love Bruce Lipton when they talk about this stuff from a scientific perspective of how your biology and your physiology is being affected by your thoughts and emotions, which are under our
Yep.
control if we have the awareness.
Yeah. No.
So I think that's unless you have anything else to add to that, I think that's a good reminder to kind of wrap this one
For
up.
sure. No, I think that's everything. I'll just summarize real quick before we wrap. I'd say, yeah, like get your basics in. I think um, getting that piece about you want your movement in, you want your protein, you want your water. Those should be, honestly, I think, regardless of injury or not, like if you're not doing that, like you're not giving yourself the best chance of having a great life as you can. So just simple as that. Let's just cover those. Let's get those out the way, and then we can start talking about other stuff. I think having a community, having a coach, having a mentor, um, that was giant for me, and it made it so that I didn't feel like I was alone during the process. It felt like I was supported. It felt like um, I didn't have to, you know, just fight things alone and go through my own thoughts and try and figure things out. That was huge. And having a multi-step, what's the word for it? It might come to me, but looking at things like a bunch of cheeses, having redundancies in your
Yeah,
in your thinking and in your support system. So
yeah,
in my case, my doctor, I would say he failed me entirely. Um, but luckily enough, I had, well, what the knowledge in my brain. I had guys like yourself. I had guys like Ben to be able to go to and help me and um, be that support system when the typical medical system didn't really give me that. Um, Supplements are big. Don't discount them. I know there's a lot of people who'll be like, "You're just pissing away your money." There's certain, like, a lot of them are a waste. A lot of them are just nonsense that people try and sell you to make money for themselves. But all of the stuff that I just mentioned, you can just go on Amazon and buy. I'm not trying to make money off you or anything like that. I think they can be hugely helpful in kind of filling in the gaps. Again, once your diet is taken care of, once your movement is taken care of, and once you have that kind of connection and mindset um, taken care of, you add the supplements, and then on top of that, you can start talking about stuff like, sauna, peptides, and different types of treatments with a chiropractor. I think that this gave me like a kind of 360-degree um, approach to recovery that just made everything feel faster, made things feel smoother, and honestly, more than anything, it just kept me sane through this whole process, knowing that I was doing absolutely everything I could um, to come back as soon as possible.
yeah, yeah. And just to, I was trying to find the video in the group, but you're now you were sledding yesterday, right, or 2 days ago?
Yeah, I've been sledding pretty frequently. I'm back into like almost sled sprints now. Um, like this is 7.5 to 8 weeks in. I'm thinking about going to play soccer on the weekend. That's kind of where I'm at right now.
Damn.
Um, not a full game, like kind of like a pickup game with a bunch of like my dad's friends, so
Yeah.
in their like 50s and 60s.
Yeah.
But just somewhere that I can start getting touches on the ball and kind of feel it out and see how it feels in like a game scenario. I'm jumping like probably like 80% of what I was able to before. Um, Again, like just working within capacity, because even now, like it doesn't feel 100% in terms of like athletic movements day to day. I would say is back at 100%, but
Yeah.
athletics just takes that little bit longer to get
And,
back to where
and
you want to be.
that's a good point because for most people, you're already 100%. Like if I was living the
Yeah,
regular person's life, I'm beyond 100% healed. Like you can do
right,
everything that you want to do. It's for
right,
people like us where our goal is not just okay. I just want to be able to interact and move around in my life. My goal is
yep,
like what's healthy for me. My definition is I want to be able to dunk any day of the week and be explosive and do all these things. That's my thermometer or my whatever, right? My
right,
thermostat. And so
yep,
to keep in mind for everybody who's listening, like if you put yourself in that context, like and think about what is the level of activity and like athletics that you participate in. Think about this: you're 100% back to doing everything you want to do in about 2 months, right? So that's very
yep,
very powerful to think about because and I mean it's not good, it's not bad, it's just personal preference. Most people are not looking to be, you know, I want to be able to play soccer and run around and sprint and be super athletic. Most people are like,
yeah.
well, I just want to be able to move around pain free, and
Yeah, I want to be able to crack people's skulls and slide tackle them and all that good stuff. It's
yeah.
it's that's the way of the world. It's to do that, you have to have that little bit extra in terms of like you said, bulletproofing reserve and
Yeah,
making sure that I don't break when I try and do that stupid stuff.
yeah,
Um, but
absolutely.
yeah, that's not everyone's goal, and that's perfectly fine. You kind of find where your level is at, where you're going to be happy, and where you're going to feel like you're back.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
And I know we covered a lot of stuff. We'll try to like have a very simple outline for anybody to follow. But and as always, like you can message either of us. Jason,
Yep.
your Instagram is what?
Move well, Toronto,
Move Well Toronto. You can follow and ask Jason any questions. You can follow me,
for
ask me
sure.
any questions. But we'll try to make a
You
very
can check out
simple.
actually. My
Go.
bad. So sorry. You can check out. I put a story up, like one of those story highlight things with like every single step. You can kind of follow along with what I did right at the beginning to kind of getting a little more into training and like now back at almost capacity, back in training. So I definitely recommend just scrolling through that so you can kind of have an idea of like the timeline of this thing. But yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I was just saying, we've covered a lot of stuff and it seems like a lot, but it's actually very, very simple. It's
Yeah,
so simple. You just got to dive in, you just got to get in there, and you'll find out, like, oh, this actually isn't very complicated, especially compared to the route of going to the doctor, whatever medication they might give you, painkillers, blah, blah, blah. Then how does this
don't get me
affect
started
your
on the painkillers, but
huh?
I said don't get me started on the painkillers because
Oh
like
yeah,
that was like advice number one. Yo, go pop some Tylenols and take a nap. I'm like, Jesus Christ, come on.
yeah,
Anyways, that's a whole nother podcast, man. Stuff
exactly,
not to do.
yeah. Well, cool. So as like I said, follow Jason. If you have questions, reach out to us. This was great. This is the podcast that I wish I had back in 2007 when I was dealing with my back pain. But we'll have to do another one. Just bullshitting around a little bit, going over
100%.
your own personal story because it's always very interesting to hear people's
For sure.
stories and backgrounds. But thanks for coming on, dude. Appreciate it.
Dude, anytime, anytime, anytime. This was great. Looking forward to continuing to converse with you, work with you, and yeah, for anyone out there who's like kind of dealing with an injury themselves, me and Ranbir have been through it, been through the ringer in various ways. We have a ton of wealth of knowledge and experience, and other people we can refer you out to if you need people in different cities. I think this is a kind of another topic for another day, but in-person training is so underrated. So if you do need help, reach out to us. We have a giant network of people that we can possibly refer you out to make a story like mine happen for yourself. Yeah, just happy to help, man.
Awesome, man. Dope.